The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Assalamu alaikum. That means peace be unto you. And in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad, and welcome to Liberated Sisters, our first show of the new year right here on Morris Media Studios. That's MorrisMediaLive.com. We have a great show for you today. First, we pray that you are all experiencing God's peace and mercy and blessings in this new year. I want to start right away by saying our condolences to the family of our brother, retired LAPD Deputy Chief Earl Paysinger, who made his transition recently. Apparently, according to the news, he was plagued with cancer, but Brother Chief Earl Paysinger, was very instrumental in a lot of bridge building between the streets and the police department and our communities. And so we really appreciate your life and legacy. And again, our prayers are with your family, Deputy Chief Earl Paysinger. His memorial service is today at West Angeles Cathedral at 11 a.m. And so today, continuing on in the show, we're going to have Brothers on the Front Line, a conversation between Sifa's Uncle Bobby X. Johnson, the uncle of Oscar Grant III, Brother Yusuf Salam, author, as well as one of the exonerated Central Park 5 brothers, and student minister Abdul Waliullah Muhammad, Minister Farrakhan's representative and the Nation of Islam's representative in San Diego at Muhammad Mosque number 8. We're going to have the Farrakhan Factor, of course, but first, the Justice Report. Today's Justice Report, straight out of the Final Call newspaper, the multi-award-winning Final Call newspaper, published by Minister Farrakhan himself under the editor-in-chief, Richard Muhammad. Warning, judgment, and guidance for President Trump. We're going to start right out. That's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's centerpiece article, and the cover story, Marching Toward War, an American assassination, American arrogance, and fears of a looming war of Armageddon as tensions rise between the United States and Iran. And so in the cover story, which we have several national pieces on this, leading the case is Brother Barrington Salmon and Brian Muhammad. Their cover story is Anger, Resentment, and Danger Rise Alongside Opposition to U.S. Warmongering in the Middle East. So what is happening here? And thank you for showing that cover story. I want to keep that image right there if we could. Brother Engineer, thank you so much. Hundreds of thousands of Iranians turned out in the streets mourning the killing of Qasem Soleimani in early January. Thousands more did the same in other parts of the Middle East. The crowds were so large in Iran, the coffin carrying the remains of the national hero was delayed several times in moving to different parts of the country. Finally, the casket arrived in his home village for the burial. This is the top general, General Soleimani, that was killed in Iraq. Also in the Final Call newspaper, senior editor, Brother Askia Muhammad writes, The United States isn't God. That's his headline. The United States isn't God. It continues with the nationwide anti-war protests that erupted in opposition to President Trump's Middle East moves. And also, again, Brother Brian Muhammad writes, it's an act of war. So there's fear that the United States assassination of the Iranian general will escalate into an all-out military conflict. I wanted to highlight those covers, this cover story and the Minister's Center article for you. That's our Justice Report. And you can get that story at finalcall.com, finalcall.com, and subscribe to the digital edition. You can get your news every Tuesday as soon as it hits on your mobile device. So now, the Farrakhan Factor.
America's about to go to war. And when she goes to war, she wants black and brown bodies. Now you're useful. They don't give a doggone about how black lives matter until they want to use black lives to accomplish their wicked ends. They're trying to provoke Iran. I would like to say to the President, Mr. President, it would not be a wise move for you, because you're already $23 trillion in debt. And you don't have any money to prosecute a war. So if you don't have the money to prosecute a war, the Federal Reserve is printing money every day. So you will have to come to the Federal Reserve to borrow money that you don't have to prosecute a war in a time when any little thing could cause the dollar to fall and the stocks to fall.
I was told to deliver this message. You think you're invincible because you got money, bombs, guns, and planes, killing babies, innocent people. I think you're insane. Chaos and destruction is the name of your game. Somebody's got to stop you before the whole world goes up in flames. So he told me to tell you.
Yes, he will fight you with the weather, with God. That's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's song, I'll Fight You, with Brother Snoop Dogg, Rick Ross, and Common from Let's Change the World, his song and box set, which he gave to us as a gift. And so now, posted July 21st, 2019 on his Twitter account, the clip that you just saw was an excerpt from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speaking at Mosque Mariam. He said that America is about to go to war. They are trying to provoke Iran. Mr. President, that would not be a wise move for you. This was July 21st, 2019. Minister Farrakhan has been a consistent warner, is a consistent warner, a guide and a teacher. And so that is just an excerpt. You can view the full message at noi.org/webcast. And that's the Farrakhan Factor for today. Now we're going to transition into an interview that I was blessed to conduct, a dialogue, rather, with three very strong brothers on the front line. I'm speaking about Student Minister Abdul Waliullah Muhammad out of San Diego Mosque number 8. Also, Cephas Uncle Bobby X Johnson. He is the uncle of Oscar Grant III, killed on a Fruitvale Station platform in Oakland, January 1st, 2009. And, you know, our prayers consistently with the family, Miss Wanda Johnson, Oscar's daughter, Tatiana, the entire family. You know, friends of Oscar who was with him, their families. There's so much in the Oscar Grant, Justice for Oscar Grant movement. So continuously keep them and those fallen by police violence in your prayers. And so also in that interview, we spoke with Brother Yusef Salam, one of the exonerated Central Park Five. He's an author. Dr. Salam was there with Uncle Bobby. They spoke to the Judicial Council in San Diego, lawyers, judges, those in the legal field. And so let's hear that interview now. I do want to say this is a 45-minute clip. It's very intriguing. And so I will say to you now, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting Liberated Sisters, those of you who engaged in our 10-10-10 campaign. And also thank you to those who are supporting the number one push right now, our Savior's Day drive, a Savior's Day gift for a man who has given 65 years of service and dedication to the cause and the defense of humanity. So I'm Sister Charlene Muhammad saying if it's impacting our community or can uplift us as a people, let's talk about it and hear brothers on the front line. Peace.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sister Charlene Muhammad with Pumps on the Ground. We made it to San Diego today, and it's a very good day whenever you can get a message out, a word to help our people. So we're sitting here at the Manchester Grand Hyatt right at the harbor in San Diego, and we are here for the Beyond the Bench conference. This is a conference that brings together national minds in the legal field, lawyers, judges, child advocates, you name it, educators, all here to see what can be done in terms of the legal system and mass incarceration beyond the judicial system. And we fell into a great panel today with our brother Cephas Uncle Bobby Johnson, the uncle of Oscar Grant III, you know, his nephew killed by Your Highness Measurely, the first cop in California to be in prison, we'll call it that, slapped on the wrist, put in jail for killing someone in the line of duty. And we also have our brother Yusef Salam here of the Central Park Five, exonerated. Now, when they see us, it's something else. So he talked about that today. And then we also have brother student minister Waliullah of Mosque number 8 in San Diego. We're gonna lob a question into them. We're not going to be here long, but Liberated Sisters Pumps on the Ground wanted to bring you something. We're here for the Final Call newspaper, so we want to get you something visual. But right now, I want you to also see the brother's book. It's Words of a Man, My Right to Be by Yusef Salam. And here's the cover. He signed a lot of books for everyone today, so he'll tell you how you can get that book. I'm going to turn the camera now on our dear brothers. Their time is tight, their busy schedules, and Liberated Sisters and Pumps on the Ground as well. Cephas Uncle Bobby Johnson, the uncle of Oscar Grant III. We have sitting next to him his brother Yusef Salam of the Central Park Exonerated, Central Park 5, also author. And also we have student minister Abdul Waliullah Muhammad of Muhammad Mosque number 8, Minister Farrakhan's representative here in the great San Diego West Coast. So we're having a discussion here about brotherhood, and I want to start, if I may, with Brother Yusef and you, Uncle Bobby, to ask about how did your brotherhood form?
You know, as we was having this conversation today on the panel with the participants of this particular panel, Yusuf reminded me of how we met. And actually, I forgot that part, which was so powerful because it helps me realize that things don't just happen. They all happen for a reason. But during that time, we was visiting New York. I don't remember exactly how, you some may remember exactly, but there was a conversation that me and this brother had that I didn't even know, and I began to talk about Oscar. And he introduced myself, and I think I was so empowered by who he was that I had suggested that maybe he could come to an event that I was going to be doing concerning this men's conference. It was an Unsung Heroes banquet that we had, and I wanted him to be the keynote speaker. And so anyway, we exchanged information. Totally forgot about that. And of course, some years later, I reached out and asked him would he come to California and be the keynote speaker for this men's conference that I was going to have, and to share with the audience at our Unsung Hero banquet as the keynote speaker. And he came. And so just learning that, it, you know, was just powerful in itself. But then he talked about his growth concerning the impact that he experienced being wrongfully incarcerated.
Right.
And he referred to the Kerner's report. I had somehow some years ago stumbled on the Kerner's report before Oscar Grant, but really forgot about all that information. And then when Oscar was murdered, I remember I dug in my books and I pulled out the Kerner's report and I began to read it because it would help brought more clarity for me understanding what happened, right? Because there was no way I could believe that this was just an accident. You know, this was by design, it was on purpose. And of course, the mass media then try to portray it as a young man that was criminalized, dehumanized, and it was justifiable homicide. But you know, the connection, then him coming to speak at the Unsung Hero happened to be on my birthday. Wow! And he spoke that day, and he shared my birthday with me. Yes. Then we get invited here, not knowing this event was going to happen on my birthday. And here we are again together.
Praise be
wow,
to
that's
Allah.
powerful.
Yes, thank you. Yes, sir. Same question.
Yeah, God is so merciful.
Yeah, he really.
It's funny. We were walking down 125th Street, and I forget exactly the occasion as well, but it was getting towards the evening time, and you know, I think we just kind of struck up a conversation, and you were telling me about that, and I was with my wife, and my wife said, I don't think I even said who I was. My wife said, well, by the way, you know, he's so and so, and it was one of those kinds of situations where, you know, of course, two tragic experiences.
Yeah.
You know. But here we are fighting for freedom, justice, and equality to try to make sure that never again. You know, the worst part about our cases is that any angle that we look at, they try to make these cases seem like these are just kind of one-offs. This is not the norm. This is not how American justice works. The reality is that this is the fabric and fiber of the American justice system, which is why I call it the criminal system of injustice as opposed to the criminal justice system. So we're trying to prepare that by really planting seeds in future generations to let them know that we are the answers that we seek. We don't have to wait for permission to live life that God gave us. You know what I'm saying? We can just live our life just like that. But all too often we're getting our lives shut down, shot down, killed, poisoned. All kind of vile things are happening to us. You know, in my case in particular, I look back and realize the horror that here they tried to get me to agree to become a slave in modern time. Because right there in the 13th Amendment, it clearly states that they can turn you back into a slave of slavery for the punishment of a crime. And so it was on me to make that real choice. But here I was 15 years old, not even really understanding the depths of what I was facing. And now, as an older, more wiser person, man, to be at conferences like this, to share in kindred spirits, to really be about the work of trying to liberate our people is what we need to be about. And I tell you, I often talk about my case as something that you have to grow through, you know, as opposed to go through. You know, because when you realize that man can mean it for evil, but God means it for good.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, so as you come out on the other end of that, you become a fearless individual, because fear then becomes false evidence appearing real. When you go through a terrible, frightening experience as going into the belly of the beast at such a young age, by the time you come out of there, you're fearless. Yeah. You know that that's false evidence appearing real. You know that you can stand up and say, not me. You know you can be just like my mother for those women out there. And you can be the superhero in your child's life and in other children's life by saying, not on my watch. And we need more men to be of that caliber as well.
Thank you. I want to ask you both this question. And Sister Beatrice, thank you, BG, Uncle Bobby's wife, pointed this out. I'm going to come back and ask a question about the filmmakers. But, you know, your nephew, Oscar, and his 5 very good close friends consider themselves brothers, experiencing this ordeal. And in their situation, still not the healing or the help, right?
That's correct.
Because this is chalked up to, it was really a slap on the wrist for the officer, but what happens to them? And then in your case, Brother Yusuf, you all were kind of, as she pointed out, and it's detailed, were thrown together, so to speak. And you intimately became aware of each other's story once Sister Ava Duvernay did the film. Exactly. When they see us, can you speak about that?
Yes, absolutely. One of the worst parts about our story is just from the, like, we want truth telling to be told, but the truth of our story is so hard to grapple with, because it's as simple as them going into any of the black and brown communities and saying any, not negus, but you know what other word I want to use that I don't use, but any negus can go. Any one of them. Let me just grab any one. And it just so happened that the 5 of us were the ones that were the most vulnerable, because we had never had any altercations with law enforcement. There was more than 5 folks that got arrested. There were people that got arrested and convicted of crimes of beating up people in the park. When those individuals who got assaulted in Central Park came to trial and were asked on the witness stand, do you see the person or persons who did this to you? In reference to what we became known as, that moniker that they put on us, the Central Park 5, they looked around the room and looked at what we were known as then and said it wasn't any of these guys. And so when they finally found the culprits who did those crimes, those guys went to jail. But what happened as a travesty in our case was that they tried to attach on the back end. Well, the reason why we went after these guys, because they was creating mayhem in the park. None of us knew each other. None of us were that intimate with each other. The only person I knew very well was Corey Wise. And they separated us right from the jump. He went to an adult facility at 16, going from Rikers Island to Attica.
Oh, Jesus.
Whereas I went from a youth facility at 15 all the way up until I was 21 before I got introduced into any kind of adult facility. This story, after we came home, none of us ever spoke about. None of us spoke about our trauma. None of us spoke about the tragedy of what happened to us. It was through us telling the story to Ava Duvernay, Oprah Winfrey, and Robert De Niro, who created the film When They See Us, that we got an opportunity to understand for the first time the depths of what happened to us, how that tragedy played out. Why was it that Raymond Santana, for instance, went back to jail? And understanding that he is a beacon for many of us who are trying to get their lives back, who have not been given any kind of services to allow them to acclimate back into society, becoming whole individuals.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And in Oscar's case, the condition of his friends now, correct me if I'm wrong, but 1 or 2 have made their transition.
Wow.
Yeah.
2.
Speak about them and the others.
Yes.
And how they're doing up.
I mean, for them, they all grew up together. And, I mean, when they were already young, you know, being that Oscar was my nephew, my first nephew at that, I would see them. And, of course, I became their uncle. So they all associated me as Uncle Bobby. I'm their uncle, right?
That's right.
But what happened on that platform that night, and for them to be so closely knit, that they were all just as impacted as Oscar was when he was murdered. For Jackie to testify that he saw smoke come out of Oscar's chest when they picked him up and smoke escaped out of his chest, it horrified him and he broke down. You know, and I talked about how the judge immediately said recess and stopped everything and made sure he rushed the jury up out of the courtroom so they couldn't witness these young men crying on the stand as they did, and then admonished that they had a responsibility to speak about the case and what happened versus showing their emotion. There was no emotion that he wanted us to express in that courtroom.
Judge Robert Perry.
Judge Robert Perry at that. But these young men, and sadly, John too, who was assassinated, we still believe that the police had something to do with that. Innocente, who was also, Chris Rutherford, who was also on the platform, but not the one that was actually arrested, but he was there with Oscar and them there on the outer skirts, because you had the 5 that was arrested against the wall, then you had about 4 other friends that was there that was kind of like wondering what's going on. Yeah. Was also killed in a setup situation, and it's alleged that it was part of a community violence thing. Well, none of us know exactly, and right now we still don't know if the people that actually killed him has been arrested. But I share that to say that despite those 2 tragedies and Oscar's other 2 friends being murdered, the other 3 have suffered great trauma. Nigel called me about 3 months ago, not knowing what to do when the police came to his home and actually came into his house because of a issue between him and his fiance at that time. Jackie Bryson, we could talk about him and his struggles and just comprehending how to conduct himself in situations that can become volatile dealing with the police. Yeah. You know, and of course Michael Greer, again, another friend on the platform, the one that was pulled down by his dress, tossed to the floor, and that really uproared everybody, and handcuffed, beat up by Johannes Besley, still traumatized. And when we tried to set them up to work with them to get help, they could not see getting the help first by the police, psychologists, which we all understood that. Right. But even the simple help of maybe going to a church and having a circle and having them just express themselves, they tried, and it just only worked to a small degree. And me learning over the years that telling this story, coughing up this pain, and hoping to be able to not only cleanse myself, but allow it to hit ears that can help understand this madness that's going on, they are still unable to do. Yeah. And so they struggle every day with just the issue of this visual that's going to happen on behalf of Oscar every year. They either come or they don't. But what they do the most, and that's what young men do today, is they go to their gravesite and they make sure if they drinking, that Oscar drinking with them. They poured it on Oscar's grave. John Tootin now is buried next to Oscar. They poured it on John Tootin's grave. And Chris Rafferty, who is also now buried right next to John Tootin, the 3 of them right next to each other, they pour him a drink. So they go up there trying to heal themselves, sadly, through the drinking and reliving their friendship, their bond.
Thank you, Uncle Bobby. Let's go to Student Minister Waliola. When you hear this, and even in these 2 seasoned brothers who have been through a lot and are still at working it through, but to a point where they're able to give of themselves so that we can in some way educate the entire network, the system, the victims or survivors of the system. What can you offer to the conversation for those who may have young men around the same age as Oscar was, and they were teens, the 5, that will help them to not just walk through this earth, this US of A, as someone that's hunted, but as Brother's book says, words of a man, my right to be. You all have a right to be. Can you offer some words and some guidance?
Well, first of all, thank you, Charlene.
Praise be to Allah.
And I want to thank my brother Yusuf and brother Bobby for receiving us. I really was enlightened. I really appreciate your words. I really want to go back to 2 things that both of you said that really cuts at the core of where we are. You talked about, Brother Bobby, you were on this journey to try to reform the system. And you come to a point in life where you realize that maybe we can't reform it. And my brother said that, you talk about the system alive and well. He said, it's not alive and well, it's alive and sick. And so when Minister Farrakhan we produced the book Justifiable Homicide, Black Youth in Perils. It goes back to what is the intent of the mindset. We go to the root of the 13th Amendment that states that slavery shall not exist at that time in these colonies unless one is duly convicted of a crime. And so the realization is that we have a society and a mindset that never intended to give us freedom or justice. So when I'm thinking, I heard Minister Farrakhan quote one day talking about the scriptures say justice stands afar off. Equity cannot enter because truth has fallen in the street. So when we do dehumanize, when we criminalize those that are in society as black and brown, it makes it easy for the system to continue to work the way, as you said, it was designed to work. And so how do we come out of that? I think that's the challenge that black people have to look at. In the book Message to the Black Man in 1959, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad at the U-Line Pavilion said that we are at the point where we must now make an agonizing reappraisal of how we're integrated into this system. Because it's not, as you said, my dear brother Yusuf, this is not an exception. This is the rule. This is how it's happening. Here in San Diego recently, a few years ago, and some of the brothers actually down at UC Berkeley going to school now, there's something called SB 33, where the district attorney picked up 33 young men based on supposedly a statute that came out of the Clinton crime bill, which was in which was Proposition 21, that became the Youth and Gang Violence Reduction, which a clause 186.2, which was a state RICO act, where they picked up these 33 young men, even though they're not committed a crime, not been convicted of anything, and they were locked up. So the system is designed. And so if we can't reform the system, then what do we do? So in 2015, I think Minister Farrakhan gave us a great opportunity to say, listen, you know, we know that voting on the national scale really have very little impact on us, but we know that voting on the local level can have a great impact. They say all politics start local, right? And so Dr. Weber with 392 and how we change a simple word in that particular bill that says that what is reasonable versus what is necessary when it comes to how the use of force policy is actually administered. So I think we have to start to look at that. When Minister Farrakhan raised a question that we really have to look at, he talked about another political party, the Justice Party. And America is not immune to a third and fourth party. They have those, the Tea Party, they have the Green Party, they have other parties that is there. So the concept of separation and coming out of is something that we as a people have to look at. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, again, in the final call, and I say the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because I think sometimes, you guys know, but a lot of people don't realize what impact did the Honorable Elijah Muhammad have on American society. You know, and why those students that he had produced have actually been a profound impact on American and the world stage. And of course, we have the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And so here's a man that have dedicated 64 years of his life towards solving the quote-unquote black problem that you and I'm 58, I take it, brother, you're in your 40 someplace. Brother, Uncle, about 30 something. I'm still
like don't crack.
It's in my mind.
Women that's in our 50s at least. So we've been around for a while, but we see that the condition of black people can change. I'll finish on that what I think is critical. When we talk about, you quoted the Kerner Commission that was commissioned by Johnson back in the 60s. 50 years later, we find out that the existence of the Kerner Commission said there were two societies, one black and one white. 50 years later, said there's still two societies, one rich and one poor. We see the same thing with our brother from the Urban League who puts out the State of Black America, Vernon Jordan. And we look at when he first did it in 72 or whatever it was, and then in this 50 or 40 years later, the same issues in education and criminal justice. We have to realize we must make an agonizing reappraisal. And the few of us that's benefiting from American society, if we believe that we're people and men and women of God, then we have to look at what does the scripture say. What would Jesus say about this condition? What would Muhammad say? What would Moses say? So our reappraisal cannot be based on how the American mindset. Our reappraisal must be based on what the scripture say, what does God say. And I heard you quote God, I heard you quote God. And at the center of what we do must be a spiritual awakening that brings the love back towards us. It's love that makes you do what you do now, my brother Yusuf. Like I said, I saw you in Atlanta a few months ago, earlier this year. Brother Bobby, of course, Brother Cephas, we have spoken, and of course it's in the actress. And so we have to come together and say, listen, we have to base on truth, the fact. And people of goodwill, it doesn't matter what color you are. In this city, I tell the mayor who's a Caucasian, and I told the chief of police that want to do all these politics, I said, let me ask you one question you're going to show. You say you're changing, we'll see if you're any better than your fathers. Because the realization is the condition that we're in, if the principles of justice is what we believe in, then I should be able to realize that how wrong you were. I should be able to realize how wrong you were. But if I still see just a black man, well, you went through a bad time, you know. But you're doing well now. I mean, come on, let's get over it.
Matter of fact, y'all others should take his example and pull yourselves up by your bootstraps.
That's right.
Even if you ain't got no boots.
Oh my God, y'all better teach.
So this is where we are. So that type of love, and this is what we're doing here, is very critical. And so I think when we talk about what have I learned, I'm just honored to have been with my brothers, because I know we have people that's out here that's standing up for what have been done, the ill that have been done, but are willing to put it all on the line for what's going on. So I'm thankful, of course, to my teacher, the Honorable Minister Farrakhan, because when I heard him 37 years ago, I know where I was. A college campus, a little crazy, on my way back to Jamaica to be killed because of my mindset of what's going on in the Caribbean at the time. So, brothers, I just want to thank y'all. I want to thank Sister Charlene to say we must make an agonizing reappraisal to realize that we cannot fix a system because you're trying to fix something that is not broken. Right. You're trying to fix something that is designed to run and perform the way it would. How do you fix that? Right. You could only abolish it and start all over. And that's what we need. There has to be a change, a shift in how we think. Not only black and brown people, but those quote-unquote good white people. Mm-hmm. You see, you know, the whole adage that, you know, bad things happen while what? Good men sat back and do nothing. So I thank God for the good that y'all are doing, and I thank God for my teachers who have taught me to fight in this avenue, because we fight every day. We're just at the police meeting with the police staff, one of the chief executives yesterday, and I'll say this very quickly. There's always additional stats that they have. We get the stats that we stop more, we do this.
Right.
But these are some other stats. Now the ACLU just put this out. All of them, they're saying that there is no discrepancy in how we're stopped. You know, and so these are the things that that's why we're never going to get justice.
See what we're talking about? This, I'm sorry.
Please jump in.
But this is technology.
Yeah. That's right.
I'm saying technology because, right, see, when they say there's no discrepancy, right, what are they really saying? We know what we do. We don't have a discrepancy. We don't have a discrepancy. We know what we do. So it's through technology. We think they're saying something else.
That's right.
We think they're talking our language.
Right.
Whereas English is a language that you need at least 2 miles to speak and at least 4 ears to listen to and understand.
That's right.
And then even if you become an astute student of the language, you now need to go even further and get into the etymological roots of some of this stuff to really, truly decipher. Because they use the technology, they use these words, and they try to make us think that maybe we crazy. Right. We trying to figure out how come the data ain't there, like we was talking about the other day. Yes. They're saying, well, we don't have enough data, but really, somebody's holding the data back.
Exactly. That's right. It's not
because the truth of the matter is that if we have examples like the vaccines and the data with the CDC, we have all of this information. Right. We were talking about what's the term that we epigenetics blew my mind. How you're talking about a concept where you can open a DNA. Matter of fact, DNA is the high point. We're talking about going into the depth of it. You can open different pieces and close different pieces through food. That's right. Mm-hmm. Through environment. That's right. Through everything. Through the water. And so we're talking about a people who, unfortunately, en masse, we don't realize how sadistic and evil a beast that we are dealing with.
I was going to ask you, and even when it's shown in plain sight, on video, for your eyes to witness the wrongs that has been perpetrated on you, and yet you can be told your eyes are lying to you.
We sometimes say that to ourselves.
Right.
We sometimes say to ourselves because we can't believe it.
Yes.
Right.
We can see it and say, man, no.
It is
I
really
must
happening.
be seeing something else.
This can't be real.
This can't be
This
real.
can't be real.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
So this is why, when I talk about warfare, because see, that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about warfare, but when folks need to understand that when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, he was assassinated not after the I Have a Dream speech, but he was assassinated after the speech where he was talking about economic boycott. That's right. When you tell people to go free, when you tell people, hey man, listen, why don't you buy from the black man? You got ice being sold over here with the black man and ice cools at 32 degrees, but you go into the white man. But see, the trick is this. We don't own the sources of water. And so the water we get oftentimes has lead poisoning in it. It tastes like some kind of something. That
even the ice have a bitter taste to it.
Man, that brother Muhammad, every time I get brother from Brother Muhammad, I don't know about that. So that's the trick.
That's right.
That's the trick. We have to understand that. So true freedom has to, first of all, that whole thing about the notion of jihad, right? When I talk about warfare, I'm not necessarily always just talking about physicality going out there. Because the greatest warfare is mental.
That's right.
And so if we get into it, we're talking about a people that have to first understand we have to correct ourselves.
Yes.
We got to give ourselves freedom. We got to give ourselves justice. And we got to treat ourselves with equality. To come up out of
that. You said hope. And when you talked about your particular situation, being able to get your degree, but also you had that 4-letter word hope, like that 4-letter word love. So and of course, and you had mom, which I read the forward in the book, and when she talked about how the poem, I read, but I just started a little reading. So how mom talked about how you talk about how poem helped you through it. She hoped it will help others. See, that's at the root of what we need to do. And like you said, Elijah Muhammad said that we cannot fathom the depth of the wickedness of what we're dealing with. And so it's a challenge because we're not talking about the white lady sitting down there. We don't know who she is. We ain't looking at her as no. We don't know what she is, right? She could be a good person. But the mindset that govern and rule, we know that is wicked and evil to its core. Now, where they stand may fit into what they say, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Give them an opportunity to be in the same position, they probably will do the same thing as their brother. I can't say 100%, but we do know that we have found out that we must make a change for ourselves. And I'll finish with this. I just saw this the other day, the depth of who we are, and as bad as slavery is. And I know I get upset when I say this, some will. But what happened with not the transatlantic slave trade, but what happened with that Berlin conference was what put the final dagger into what our future would be until a man like young Elijah Muhammad would have come. Because they took the very essence of who we are. Because when you take the man is mine and what he saw, then you took everything from it. So slavery had already totally destroyed us. But then when you took the land base that we were connected to a degree, even did further. And then when you took God and made him a spook and a mystery, it even got further. So there's a lot of work we have to do. I told somebody this the other day. I say it's easier. Now somebody will get upset with me again, but I will say it's easy to get our brothers and sisters off crack than it is to get some black folks off false Christianity. My God. Right. Robbed of our language. Robbed of our culture.
Robbed of our God.
But I think
some
too,
of us by the way we act.
But the simplest thing that I believe hold us in bondage is our simple name.
Simple name.
I walked around for years accepting Johnson as my name. But as I got introduced to Islam and, of course, the nation and began to listen to the minister, I said, my freedom is not going to start until I first free my name from my master. So I am, and I think you said it at the beginning, but if not, I'm going to correct it now. I am affectionately known as Cephas X.
Cephas Uncle Bobby X John.
Affectionately known to the community as Uncle Bobby X.
Because
that is so important to know. Renaming us, taking away our name. You know, and I was listening to my brother Yusuf, right, and how blessed he was that his mama had that consciousness to name him a name that had some meaning, that while he was really experiencing that trial, came to realize how important that was for his destiny. Because had he not had that, he would have just saw himself as another John.
And the story of Yusuf or Joseph, both in the Bible and the Holy Quran, is such a powerful story. One that was into bondage and came out and was put into authority. So, no. It's a powerful stuff.
The correlations are beyond. I mean, it's almost like, how much more can God say to you? Show you.
Right.
God is real.
That's
right.
That's right.
I mean, you talked about the definition of a thing. And I'm saying that not for us, but for them, right? We're going to define that thing as Johnson. Right?
That's right.
And so that becomes very critical, because when you think about even language, I remember reading this version of the Quran where in the introduction the brother said how he was no longer going to speak the language of the oppressor, because he found out that by speaking their language, he thought in their language, he acted in their language. Everything that came about was as a result of that. Whereas if you have your own language, now you can define reality for yourself to truly understand what it is that you're seeing. Because say for instance, I can come out and say, man, brother, I love you. But if I was speaking Spanish, you would know what type of love I'm talking about. I might be telling you I love you like I love my car. So now if we out here in the streets, you know that, hey, I'm going to go with the brother that I really love, as opposed to somebody just love me like they love their car. You see what I'm saying? You need people that really truly love us as a people, that want to see us all go free. You know, and I think that that's also the reality too about how we liberate ourselves.
Thank you. Oh my God, we're just warming up. This is a great conversation. I'm going to wrap it because Beatrice is hungry. Okay, she's in my ear. But I'm going to end it with this question for now, and this is so great. I want to ask you to talk about the filmmakers. You know, I did not want to go to Fruitvale. If it wasn't for your wife, I probably wouldn't have been there. Many places, Ferguson, a lot of places. But I want you to talk about the impact of our dear young brother soldier Ryan Coogler's effort in telling Oscar's story and what that did for you, your family, for Oscar, for Tatiana, for Miss Wanda, and also our sister Ava Duvernay telling your story along with Brother De Niro, Sister Oprah, as you mentioned. What did these young, fearless filmmakers do for you in your healing process and in your observation for us as we're looking in? And also we have to, you know, heal. There's people still right now that like, you lived it. But watching the documentary for some was just too much to bear. And it's a documentary, not the real life. So let's go with you first, Uncle Bobby.
When Ryan was, Forrest Whitaker actually called us and said he had a young man that he would like for us to meet, right? That had proposed to him this film idea. And we had already been rejecting different folks because they were coming as imposters for their own ideas of what they were going to create, right? And we was like, no. And so I remember we stated to Forrest that we'll meet him. You know, a young brother from Oakland. He had no name. He was nobody. And when Ryan came and he shared with us his idea of this script that he had written concerning Oscar and his life and Tatiana, he was speaking from a heart of love and how we loved Oscar. And he wanted to show that Oscar was human and that he loved people and people loved him, and therefore that would be the main focus. And so we bought it. We felt that that was something that we needed people to know, that Oscar was a human being. You know, and that he had love for his daughter. He was an outstanding father, a great son, you know, definitely a great nephew, right? And that he was a smart child. And so we bought that. And so what I got out of that with Ryan, that there was another form of an attack to humanize us as people first, drawing us into this idea that the black man and black family is a family of love. And that we can build upon one another once we see ourselves on the big screen as that. Instead of being rescued by, somebody white or up in this tragic event of gang banging or, dope selling and pimping or whatever. You know what I'm saying? These
betrayals.
Yeah.
Yes, right. And so, and then because we refused to see the movie before Sundance. And when we saw that Sundance, the audience was full of white folks. And we definitely was glad that you came along with us, Sister Charlene, because you got to witness it too. And we were really the only black families in the theater. George Whitaker sitting behind us, Ryan Kruger sitting there, Michael B. Jordan sitting behind us, and they all watching us. Yeah. And Michael B. did Oscar so well. He brought him back to life. And it was just painful to watch that movie. But I'm saying all that to say that these young movie makers like Ava, Ryan Coogler, and these videographers that are coming into existence are expressing themselves by showing who we are as a people, that I believe is capturing the essence of creating that love among us again that can unite us in such a way that we know now that we have a right to life, and that this history that has always been portrayed in the negative has been a false narrative that's been perpetrated on us for so long that many of us bought into it. But this new generation is fearless, and they're expressing themselves through our real essence of who we are. And for me, it's been a powerful experience.
Thank you, Uncle Bobby. Yeah, Fruitvale. Ooh. That was the film, that issue. The whole Oscar Grant piece is what took me out of straight hard news writing. And I told the editor, I cannot write this as a news story because I had to decompress it, and so, and your sentiment in terms of Sister Ava, and I know there's a team that does this.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, let me just grab that book real quick because I want to share something with you all.
Thank you.
Sister Ava really is a special spirit, I would say, a special soul in the world. Because I remember I used to watch her, and at one point she had this shirt on that said, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams." Here you have a person who took up the camera not as a part of purpose from an early part of her life, but later on in life, and is doing tremendously wonderful pieces. When we looked at who could tell the story and how powerful it can become, after seeing a film like Selma, this is really what was the catalyst for us even reaching out to Ava. And when Ava took the story and cared for it in a way that made us proud, in a way that made us know that she wasn't going to just, give us some money for the story and run with it and say, I got it from here. We were on set every day. We could come anytime we wanted to. We were often asked, was it like this? So that as the young actors and actresses were able to recreate this story, they were able to pump new life into it. They were able to give young people an opportunity to understand what was at stake and what continues to be at stake. Because here we are now, 30 years later. They tried to bury us. But they forgot, just like these stories, the beautiful thing about us is that we're seeds. You can't keep the truth buried in the ground.
That's right.
And so we emerge like the phoenix from the ashes oftentimes. Because as anyone who really understands and studies history, what they find out is that whenever you plot, God is the best plot. That's right. And whenever you plan, God is the best planner. And oftentimes when they come to build a fire to consume you, they forget the owner of the heat. And so what I wanted to share specifically with regards to my friend Ava Duvernay is a poem that I wrote that is actually my signature piece. But I want to share this with you all and also dedicate it to Ava. It's called The Revolution. will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. I can remember when that statement made me sad inside. Too young to be in it. Now I couldn't even see it? Why? Why couldn't the revolution be televised? The last poets, Gil Scott Heron. As I grew up, I began to see. They left theirs, and I too wanted to leave a mark on history. A man in half, and I wanted to bask in that task that set men free. But a revolution, the revolution, is where I knew I had to be. The revolution will not be televised. They didn't want to display the victory of those quote-unquote lesser men. The revolution will not be televised. Smile. I know. Because folks like Ryan and Ava are the revolution. Me.
That's right.
Thank you all. We're going to wrap it there. Liberated Sisters.